Psycho wasn't just a thriller. It was a cinematic earthquake that changed movies forever. Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 masterpiece broke rules, terrified audiences, and redefined suspense. But behind the black and white images lurk secrets stranger than fiction. Did you know the infamous shower scene used chocolate syrup instead of blood? Or that Hitchcock played twisted pranks on his cast that left them shaken for life? Today, we're unlocking the vault. 15 weird, fascinating, and little-known facts about Psycho that will make you watch the film in a whole new way. The shower scene used chocolate syrup. This wasn't just a murder. It was a revolution in cinematic trickery that fooled millions. The shower scene in Psycho remains one of the most dissected sequences in film history. And yet, its most bizarre secret is that the blood was Bosco chocolate syrup. Hitchcock knew that since the film was shot in black and white, audiences wouldn't see color. What mattered was the thickness, the way liquid streaked across tile, and how it swirled down the drain. Chocolate syrup gave him the perfect look, darker and heavier than standard stage blood. To sell the illusion, Hitchcock filmed the sequence with 78 camera setups, later editing them into 52 quick, disorienting cuts. Viewers swore they saw the knife pierce flesh, but in reality, not a single stab is shown connecting. Bernard Herrmann's shrieking violins, added against Hitchcock's original wishes, became the auditory violence the camera avoided. The combination of sound, editing, and a kitchen condiment created terror so convincing that Janet Leigh later admitted she never felt safe in a shower again. To her, the curtain was no longer protection. It was a trap. A cheap grocery store product and some ruthless editing gave cinema its most famous murder, proving horror doesn't need gore to scar audiences forever. Hitchcock bought the novel for just $9,000. What audiences didn't realize was that Psycho was built on a masterstroke of secrecy. The film began as a novel written by Robert Bloch in 1959, loosely inspired by the crimes of Wisconsin killer Ed Gein. Hitchcock read the book and knew he had something that could upend cinema. But he didn't want anyone spoiling his surprise. So he ordered his assistant to buy the rights quietly, for just $9,000, a bargain price for what would become one of the most influential films in history. Hitchcock then went further. He purchased nearly every available copy of the book from bookstores across America. Why? To keep audiences completely in the dark about the plot twists. He wanted them shocked when Marion Crane, seemingly the story's heroine, was murdered halfway through and utterly blindsided by Norman Bates's secret at the end. His strategy worked. By controlling access to the story, Hitchcock engineered one of the purest cinematic experiences ever. Audiences entered theaters with no idea of what awaited them. In an era without social media spoilers or leaks, Hitchcock still understood the importance of surprise marketing. His $9,000 gamble turned into a fortune and preserved Psycho as an unrepeatable event. The movie almost didn't happen. This wasn't a sure thing. It was almost never made. By 1959, Alfred Hitchcock was Hollywood royalty, known for elegant thrillers like Rear Window and North by Northwest. But when he pitched Psycho, Paramount executives recoiled. They called the story disgusting and beneath Hitchcock's stature. Studios wanted more glamour, not a tale about stolen money, a rundown motel, and a deranged killer in his mother's clothes. Paramount refused to finance it. Instead of walking away, Hitchcock took an unprecedented risk. He mortgaged his house, cut his director's salary, and shot the film for less than $1 million, using the crew from his TV show Alfred Hitchcock Presents to save money. He even insisted on filming in black and white, partly for budget reasons, and partly to make the violence less graphic. The gamble worked. Psycho earned over $50 million worldwide, more than 50 times its budget, becoming Hitchcock's biggest commercial hit. The studio that rejected it was forced to admit they'd been wrong. The irony? Hitchcock had proved that horror, a genre considered low, could outgross prestige dramas. The film that nearly didn't exist reshaped Hollywood, showing that risks sometimes produce revolutions. Janet Leigh was traumatized for life. What fans never realized was how deeply Psycho scarred its star. Janet Leigh was already a respected actress when Hitchcock cast her as Marion Crane, but her role in the infamous shower scene left lasting psychological damage. Filming required her to spend 7 straight days under pounding water, while multiple cameras captured every angle. Hitchcock's obsessive control pushed her to the edge, leaving her feeling vulnerable and exposed. Years later, Leigh admitted the experience permanently changed her relationship with bathing. She confessed she never took showers again, only baths. On the rare occasions she had to step under a shower head, she locked the bathroom door, kept the light on, and left the curtain slightly open so she could see out. She described the lingering fear as a reminder that it was never safe again. This wasn't just a role, it became part of her real life. Leigh would always be remembered as one of cinema's ultimate victims, and she herself admitted she carried that fear for decades. The terror Hitchcock etched on film didn't just haunt audiences, it haunted his leading lady every time she entered a bathroom. The first flush toilet in Hollywood history. This wasn't just a murder mystery, it was a plumbing revolution. In 1960, American films avoided showing toilets. Censors deemed bathrooms indecent, even though audiences used them every day. Hitchcock, ever the provocateur, decided to challenge that taboo. He insisted on including a scene where Marion Crane tears up her handwritten calculations about the stolen money and flushes them down a toilet. It seems minor, but it was groundbreaking, the first time a flushing toilet had ever been shown in American cinema. The Motion Picture Production Code had long resisted such depictions, arguing they were vulgar. But Hitchcock argued it was essential to the plot. Marion's guilt, literally washed away, needed to be visible. Against expectations, the scene made it through censors. Audiences noticed. Some were as startled by the bathroom close-up as they were by the shower scene. To them, it felt strangely intimate, a reminder that Psycho was dragging cinema into everyday realism. Today, the moment seems laughably mundane. But in 1960, a toilet flush became a cultural scandal, and another way Hitchcock rewrote the rules of Hollywood forever. Hitchcock's bizarre no-late policy. What audiences didn't know was that Hitchcock reinvented the way people went to the movies with Psycho. In 1960, theaters were casual spaces. People wandered in halfway through films, caught the ending, and stayed for the next showing. Hitchcock despised this habit. For Psycho, he demanded theaters adopt a strict policy. No one would be admitted after the movie began. His reasoning was simple, but brilliant. Janet Leigh's Marion Crane appears to be the heroine, but she's shockingly killed halfway through. Hitchcock didn't want latecomers wandering in and asking theater staff, "Where's Janet Leigh?" Posters warned, "No one, but no one, will be admitted after the start." Some theaters even played a recording of Hitchcock's voice announcing the rule to waiting crowds. The result? Long lines around the block. Audiences had to plan their schedules, creating a sense of event and urgency. Word of mouth spread, and demand skyrocketed. The gimmick became part of the thrill. If you missed the start, you missed Psycho. This wasn't just marketing. It was a revolution in exhibition. Hitchcock turned punctuality into suspense, transforming a practical rule into legendary showmanship. Anthony Perkins earned almost nothing. This wasn't stardom. It was near exploitation. Anthony Perkins's role as Norman Bates defined his career, but financially, it left him shortchanged. Perkins, who was under contract with Paramount, received a modest salary, far below the scale of his performance's impact. Unlike Janet Leigh, whose career thrived after Psycho, Perkins was boxed in by Norman's shadow. Even worse, Perkins didn't benefit from the film's enormous profits. Psycho went on to earn over $50 million on a budget under $1 million. But Perkins' contract didn't include residuals. He later revealed he was excluded from the massive sums that Hitchcock and Paramount earned from re-releases, television syndication, and merchandising. The role that made him famous also typecast him permanently. For decades, casting agents struggled to see Perkins as anyone other than Norman Bates. He returned to the role in sequels during the 1980s, but by then, the stigma had already shaped his career trajectory. Hitchcock's gamble made a fortune, but not for Perkins. In a cruel irony, the man whose performance carried Psycho was left financially stranded by the very film that immortalized him. The sound of murder came from a melon. What fans never realized was that the stabbing sound effects weren't knives at all. They were fruit. Hitchcock wanted something visceral for the shower scene, something audiences would feel in their stomachs. Foley artists lined up an assortment of foods, steaks, cabbages, grapefruits. They plunged knives into each, recording the results. The winner? A cassava melon. The melon's dense, fibrous texture created a sound that was both wet and sharp, eerily close to the imagined sound of flesh being pierced. Hitchcock approved it instantly. During screenings, the effect was so convincing that audiences swore they saw the knife break skin. But in truth, no blade ever touched Janet Leigh. The illusion was purely auditory. The cassava melon became a piece of horror history, proving how much power sound could hold over the imagination. Decades later, sound designers still study the scene, pointing to it as one of cinema's greatest examples of psychoacoustics, where the ear convinces the eye. Hitchcock didn't just terrify with visuals. He made fruit scream on behalf of his film, and in doing so, he sliced into cinema's subconscious forever. Hitchcock tormented Janet Leigh. This wasn't just directing, it was psychological warfare. Alfred Hitchcock had a reputation for pushing his actors to extremes, but during Psycho, his obsession with control took on darker tones. Janet Leigh, already exposed in body and mind by the shower scene, became the focus of Hitchcock's infamous pranks. One chilling example was when Hitchcock allegedly sent her a small coffin containing a doll resembling her lifeless body. It was his creepy way of reminding her of her character's fate. While some dismissed it as Hitchcock's black humor, Leigh admitted it rattled her. He also controlled the filming process with unnerving precision. The shower sequence required dozens of takes, leaving Leigh freezing under cold water for days. Hitchcock gave sparse direction, preferring to manipulate her reactions by maintaining tension on set. Crew members later recalled that he treated the actress more like a prop than a collaborator. For Hitchcock, fear wasn't just something to be faked for the camera. It had to be lived by the actors. Leigh survived the production, but the psychological games haunted her, just as Marion Crane haunted audiences. Hitchcock didn't just orchestrate horror. He inflicted it. The film's censors demanded weird cuts. What audiences didn't see was the unusual battle Hitchcock fought with Hollywood's censors. The shower sequence was considered too intense, and the opening scene, where Janet Leigh appears in a revealing outfit, was thought to push boundaries. The review board demanded changes. Hitchcock, sly as ever, pretended to make adjustments. When he resubmitted the exact same cut, the censors mysteriously approved it. Hitchcock later joked that the only thing he changed was their minds. Some reports suggest he even asked his team to exaggerate the problem areas during an early screening, knowing the censors would fixate on them. When he sent the original footage back, it seemed toned down by comparison. By outsmarting the system, Hitchcock kept Psycho exactly as he envisioned it. He didn't just master suspense on screen, he mastered it in the boardroom, turning the rule makers into unwilling participants in his game. The result was a film that felt daring, dangerous, and untouchable. Norman Bates was inspired by a real killer. This wasn't pure invention. Norman Bates had unsettling roots in reality. Author Robert Bloch, who wrote the 1959 novel Psycho, lived only a short distance from Plainfield, Wisconsin, the home of real-life criminal Ed Gein. When police arrested Gein in 1957, they discovered disturbing evidence that shocked the nation. Bloch, fascinated by the idea of a seemingly quiet man hiding dark secrets, used this as the spark for his novel. Hitchcock softened the details but leaned into the psychology. Norman Bates became a character audiences had never seen before. Polite, boyish, even sympathetic at first glance, yet harboring a fractured identity that led to violence. His warped relationship with his mother became the emotional center of the story, shifting the focus from gore to psychological suspense. The result was groundbreaking. Before Psycho, villains were often larger-than-life masterminds or obvious monsters. Norman was different. He looked ordinary, even gentle, until his darker side emerged. That contrast made him unforgettable and paved the way for decades of horror characters, from The Silence of the Lambs to modern slashers. Norman Bates may have been fictional, but his DNA came from unsettling real events, and Hitchcock turned that inspiration into cinematic history. Hitchcock's cameo was almost a spoiler. What fans didn't know was that Hitchcock almost gave himself away in Psycho. The director had a tradition of making quick, playful cameos in his films, often appearing in crowds or background shots. For Psycho, his first idea was to show up outside the Bates Motel as a shadowy man in a cowboy hat. But test audiences found it distracting. It tipped them off that Hitchcock himself was lurking near Norman Bates's secrets. So he changed it. Instead, Hitchcock appears in the film's first act, standing outside Marion Crane's office, dressed in a simple suit. The cameo lasts just seconds. Blink, and you'll miss it. Placing it early was intentional. By the time the film reached its shocking twists, audiences had forgotten Hitchcock's presence. This minor detail speaks volumes about Hitchcock's mastery of control. Even his own playful ego had to serve the story. He understood that Psycho relied on absolute focus and tension. Nothing could pull audiences out of the illusion. His cameo became a quick wink, not a spoiler, ensuring that the audience remained trapped inside the nightmare without distraction. The skeleton reveal nearly failed. This wasn't seamless horror. It was almost comedy. In the film's climax, when Norman's mother is revealed as a rotting skeleton, test audiences burst out laughing. The moment, meant to shock, instead fell flat under the original lighting and sound design. Hitchcock panicked. If the big reveal was ruined, the entire film's finale would collapse into ridicule. Determined to save it, Hitchcock made crucial adjustments. He reshot the scene using harsher, starker lighting to emphasize the grotesque features of the skeleton. More importantly, he asked Bernard Herrmann to add a chilling final sting of music, timed perfectly to the reveal. With these changes, the laughter disappeared. Now, audiences gasped, screamed, and recoiled. The incident proves just how fragile suspense can be. A single detail, lighting, sound, or timing, can swing a moment from horror to humor. Hitchcock, the ultimate perfectionist, refused to let Psycho's climax slip into parody. By fine-tuning the scene, he preserved one of the most unforgettable endings in horror history. A skeleton in a chair might have been ridiculous, but in Hitchcock's hands, it became legendary. Saul Bass claimed he directed the shower scene. What audiences didn't realize was that one of cinema's greatest sequences sparked a behind-the-scenes feud. Saul Bass, the brilliant graphic designer who created Psycho's opening credits, also storyboarded the infamous shower scene. Years later, Bass claimed he did more than sketch it. He said he actually directed it. Hitchcock's crew quickly denied the claim. They insisted Hitchcock was on set, controlling every detail of the shoot. Cinematographer John L. Russell credited Hitchcock with meticulously planning the 78 camera setups and orchestrating the edits that gave the scene its shocking rhythm. Still, Bass's story lingered. His detailed drawings undeniably shaped the final sequence, raising the question, was it Hitchcock's direction alone, or a collaboration? Most historians agree Hitchcock deserves primary credit, but Bass's influence can't be ignored. His sharp, modernist sensibilities helped visualize how the scene could be both abstract and violent without ever showing a stabbing blade connect with flesh. In many ways, Bass's fingerprints are embedded in the scene's design. The debate has never been fully settled, adding a layer of mystery to cinema's most famous murder. Did Hitchcock craft it alone, or did his designer share in the glory? Hitchcock's $9,000 gamble became his biggest hit. This wasn't just a success. It was the defining triumph of Hitchcock's career. Made for under $1 million, financed largely out of Hitchcock's own pocket, Psycho became a global phenomenon. It earned over $50 million at the box office, making it the director's most profitable film ever. The return on investment was astronomical, cementing Hitchcock's status not just as a director, but as a marketing genius. The studio that once rejected the project now scrambled to cash in. Psycho spawned sequels, imitations, and decades of horror films that borrowed its blueprint. The sudden death of a main character, the twisted psychology of the killer, and the shocking finale. It also changed audience behavior. People lined up around the block, driven by the no late entry rule and the mystery of Hitchcock's marketing campaign. For Hitchcock, Psycho was more than a hit. It was a cultural earthquake that reshaped Hollywood economics. Low-budget horror was no longer cheap. It was big business. And all of it began with one man's gamble on a lurid novel, $9,000 in rights, and an unshakable belief that audiences were ready for something they'd never seen before. Psycho wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural earthquake that shattered Hollywood's old rules and built an entirely new language of suspense. From chocolate syrup masquerading as blood to marketing tricks that turned theaters into fortresses of secrecy, Hitchcock's masterpiece thrived on the weird and the unexpected. More than 60 years later, we're still talking about it, and still flinching at that shower curtain. Which of these strange facts blew your mind the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more hidden Hollywood secrets.